We are continuing to discuss how people choose to move through the water. So, I mentioned at the end of last time individual constraints. Different individuals will solve the same task in a different manner. So, the same set is going to create very different outcomes depending on who each swimmer is. So, think about your last practice. What happened? You gave a set to 20 to 30 kids, and you probably saw 20 to 30 different results, not just so much in terms of the performance, but how swimmers choose to solve the task, the skills that they use to get the task done in a manner that was relatively satisfactory. How do individuals differ? They differ physiologically, they differ biomechanically, and they differ psychologically. So, from a physiological side, the different levels of fitness, the size of their heart and their lungs, the size of their muscles, how strong they are, their hormonal capacities, etc. From a biomechanical perspective, the length of their limbs, their center of mass, the size of their feet, the size of their hands, how dense their bones are, how tall they are, how much they weigh, their joint mobility, all of these factors play a role in terms of how swimmers move through the water. Lastly, psychologically, how resilient are they are? Will they continue to put forth great effort? How positive they are? Do they consistently believe that they can be successful? Their work ethic, their aggressiveness, their competitiveness, these are all going to impact how they choose to move. So, some examples to make this concrete. Think about a 5 foot, 110-pound female and then a 6'6, 220-pound male. How are they going to swim freestyle? What's their stroke length going to look like? What's their stroke rate going to look like? What's their timing going to look like? Likewise, we've got two breaststrokers. One has great range of motion through the hips, knees, and ankles. The other does not. They go the same time for 100 meters. How are they going to swim? What's their timing going to look like? What's their stroke rate going to look like? What's their stroke length going to look like? Is it going to be upper body driven or lower body driven? You can see the differences based upon that one relatively small change. So we have two 6'0" males. They're sprinters. They swim the 100-meter freestyle. One is extremely mobile in the upper body and in the ankles. The other is really inflexible. They go the same time. So how are they going to swim? What's their stroke length going to look like? What's their stroke rate going to look like? What's their timing going to look like? It's probably going to be significantly different, especially considering that they have the same performance level. Another example, let's compare the same athlete. In one case, it's the third day of practice. The other is 1 week out from a championship meet, so they're obviously pretty ready to go. They're going to go 10 100s on 115. They're going to hold 4 dolphin kicks off of every wall. What do you think the underwater segment will look like? You can probably guess that in one case, it's going to look pretty bad, and in another case, it's going to look pretty good. And that's because someone's physical fitness at any given moment in time is going to influence how they can swim and the skills that they can display. Lastly, so who had better technique, Janet Evans or Ian Thorpe? Both multiple world record holders, multiple Olympic gold medalists. They swam the same event and held the world record for multiple years, yet they swam very, very differently. And in both cases, they likely maximized or optimized the physical attributes that they had. If Ian Thorpe tried to swim like Janet Evans, you probably wouldn't be reading about Ian Thorpe right now. And if Janet Evans tried to swim like Ian Thorpe, you probably wouldn't be reading about Janet Evans here either. So, how someone swims and how they can be successful is going to be dependent on the attributes that they bring to the pool. Next, we have environmental constraints. Now, for our purposes, they're not going to be as important for task design because the physical environment doesn't change very much. Long course versus short course is important. And also, if you go to altitude, that can have an impact. If for whatever reason your pool is really hot, that could have an impact. However, those are pretty rare circumstances. However, the social and cultural environment is very important, and that does act as a constraint on learning and performance. So think about a really positive group that you're coaching with or a really negative group that you're coaching with. That attitude is going to be infectious and it's going to limit how people choose to interact with their sets. The same thing can be true of motivated versus unmotivated athletes and motivated versus unmotivated groups. While this is a really important aspect of coaching, it's not as important in terms of task design. However, I wanted to mention it so that you're aware of it and how it operates and influences coaching and performance. So the competition course. There's going to be an emphasis on speed in short course swimming and an emphasis on sustainability in long course swimming. So think about a set, 1050s on 45 fly, either performed long course or short course. You can choose whatever interval is appropriate for your group, one that's moderately challenging. How is that set going to look different in terms of not only the performances, but the skills? It's going to look pretty different in terms of what the fly looks like based upon the challenges that the competition course presents. So as you can see, the same set performed in a different environment is going to have a different outcome. And so that respect, So from that perspective, the competition course is an important aspect of which skills emerge, and you need to be cognizant of that when designing sets. So next time, we've talked about how constraints shape movement. We've also talked about how we can change constraints to change movement. So how do we know how we want swimmers to swim? We need a pretty simple approach to that in order to be effective in creating change. That's what we'll discuss in the next video.